The Pianist of the Warsaw Ghetto Act I. September 1939. Warsaw, Poland. The city burns. German Luftwaffe bombers have been pounding the Polish capital for 3 weeks now, systematically destroying neighborhoods, killing thousands, breaking the spirit of resistance. The siege is methodical, ruthless, designed to crush Warsaw into submission. Buildings collapse into rubble. Fires rage unchecked through entire districts. The dead lie in streets because there's no time to bury them, no safe way to collect bodies while bombs continue falling. The Władysław Szpilman stands at the window of his apartment on Stradmiacy Street, watching his city die. He's 32 years old, a concert pianist, one of Warsaw's most celebrated musicians. Before the war, before the bombs, before everything changed, he performed regularly on Polish radio, playing Chopin, Beethoven, Mozart for audiences across the country. He had a career, a reputation, a future. Now he has nothing but the clothes on his back and a family trapped in a burning city with no escape. The apartment building shakes as another bomb explodes nearby, close enough to rattle windows, to send plaster dust cascading from the ceiling. His mother screams from the other room. His father tries to calm her, his voice steady despite the terror everyone feels. Szpilman has 2 sisters, Regina and Helena, and a younger brother, Henryk. All of them are here, huddled in this apartment, waiting for the inevitable. Waiting for Warsaw to fall. Waiting for whatever comes next. Outside, through the smoke and dust, Szpilman can see German tanks rolling down the boulevard. The siege is ending. Warsaw is about to surrender. The Polish army fought desperately, hopelessly, outnumbered and outgunned from the first day. Germany attacked with overwhelming force, modern mechanized divisions crushing through Polish defenses designed for a different kind of war. The Soviet Union invaded from the east simultaneously, splitting Poland between 2 totalitarian powers. The country is being erased, divided, conquered. And now the conquerors are coming to claim their prize. September 28, 1939. Warsaw officially surrenders. German forces occupy the city. Nazi flags appear on government buildings. Wehrmacht soldiers patrol the streets. The occupation begins immediately, systematically, efficiently. The Germans have plans for Poland, detailed plans developed long before the invasion. Poland will cease to exist as an independent nation. Its territory will be absorbed into the German Reich or transformed into a colonial territory called the General Government. Its people will be enslaved, exploited, eventually eliminated to make room for German settlers. This is not ordinary military occupation. This is the beginning of genocide. For Szpilman and his family, the first months of occupation are disorienting, terrifying, increasingly restrictive. New laws appear constantly, each one tightening the noose around Polish society. Jews especially face escalating persecution. Szpilman is Jewish, as is his entire family. This fact, previously irrelevant to his identity as a musician, now defines everything. The Nazis are obsessed with race, with categorizing people, with separating Aryans from subhumans. Jews are marked as enemies, parasites, targets for elimination. October 1939. Jews are required to register with German authorities. November, Jews are banned from certain professions, certain streets, certain establishments. December, Jewish bank accounts are frozen, businesses confiscated, property seized. The process is methodical, designed to strip Jews of economic independence, social status, human dignity. The goal is clear even if most people can't yet believe it. The Germans intend to destroy Jewish life in Poland completely. Szpilman loses his job at Polish radio. Jews are not allowed to broadcast anymore, not allowed to perform publicly, not allowed to participate in Polish cultural life. His income disappears overnight. His family survives on savings, selling possessions, taking whatever work they can find. His father, a businessman before the war, tries to maintain optimism. This is temporary. The occupation cannot last. The Allies will intervene. France and Britain declared war on Germany when Poland was invaded. Help is coming. They just need to survive until liberation arrives. But help doesn't come. France falls in 6 weeks during the spring of 1940. Britain fights on but alone, defensive, incapable of liberating occupied Europe. The United States remains neutral, watching from across the Atlantic, unwilling to enter another European war. Poland is abandoned, forgotten, left to German mercy. And the Germans have no mercy. November 1940. The Warsaw Ghetto is established. The Nazis order all Jews in Warsaw to relocate to a designated district, a sealed area surrounded by walls, barbed wire, guarded gates. Over 400,000 Jews are forced into approximately 1.3 square miles, creating one of the most densely populated, horrifically overcrowded places on Earth. The Szpilman family receives their relocation order like everyone else. They have 48 hours to abandon their apartment, pack whatever they can carry and move into the ghetto. The family finds a small apartment on Kladna Street, sharing 2 rooms with another family. 8 people total in a space designed for 3. No privacy, no personal space, no dignity. The conditions are immediately terrible and rapidly worsen. The ghetto is sealed from the outside world. Food supplies are controlled by the Germans, deliberately insufficient, calculated to cause slow starvation. Ration cards provide perhaps 200 calories per day, roughly 1/10 of what humans need to survive. The ghetto inhabitants must supplement rations through smuggling, black market trading, selling possessions, anything to obtain food. Szpilman becomes a smuggler by necessity. He's not a criminal, not brave, not suited for this kind of work. But his family is starving. His mother grows weaker daily. His sisters lose weight, their faces becoming gaunt, their eyes hollow. Hunger is constant, overwhelming, all-consuming. People talk obsessively about food, dream about meals, fantasize about bread and meat and butter. The ghetto is dying slowly, methodically, exactly as the Germans intended. He finds work playing piano in ghetto cafes. Yes, cafes exist even here, even in hell. The ghetto has a strange dual reality. Most inhabitants are starving, dying, desperate. But a small minority, smugglers and black marketeers and Jewish police collaborating with Germans, they have money, resources, desire for entertainment. Ghetto cafes cater to this elite, providing music, alcohol, temporary escape from surrounding horror. Szpilman plays Chopin in these cafes, the same pieces he performed on Polish radio, but now for an audience of desperate people trying to pretend normalcy while their world collapses. The money he earns from playing piano buys food on the black market. Bread, potatoes, occasionally meat or eggs, smuggled into the ghetto through secret routes, sold at extortionate prices. This food keeps his family alive, barely one day at a time. But it's never enough. The hunger never stops. His father weakens, developing diseases associated with malnutrition. His mother coughs constantly, probably tuberculosis, probably fatal without medicine that doesn't exist in the ghetto. Winter 1941-42 is devastating. The ghetto has no heat, insufficient fuel, overcrowded buildings impossible to warm. People freeze to death in their apartments, their bodies discovered days later, frozen solid, no one strong enough to carry them away. Disease spreads rapidly in the unsanitary, overcrowded conditions. Typhus especially, transmitted by lice that infest every building, every person, impossible to eliminate. Thousands die from typhus, their bodies collected by special details, piled in courtyards, eventually transported to mass graves outside the ghetto walls. Szpilman watches people die in the streets. Children especially, skeletal, hollow-eyed, begging for bread that no one can give them. He sees corpses every morning, bodies lying on sidewalks, covered with newspapers, ignored by passers-by who have become numb to death, who no longer react to suffering because suffering is everywhere, constant, inescapable. The living step over the dead on their way to work, to food lines, to whatever activities maintain the illusion of life. The Germans establish a Jewish council, the Judenrat, to administer the ghetto. Jewish leaders forced to implement German orders, to collect taxes, to maintain order, to compile lists of inhabitants. It's collaboration by necessity, a poison gift that destroys those who accept it. The Judenrat members have impossible choices. Implement German orders and preserve some semblance of organization, or resist and watch the Germans destroy the ghetto entirely. Most choose collaboration, believing they can mitigate harm, protect some people even if they can't save everyone. But the Germans don't want mitigation. They want elimination. The ghetto is not a permanent solution in Nazi plans. It's a temporary holding area, a place to concentrate Jews before final deportation. Deportation where? The rumors are terrifying, contradictory, impossible to verify. Some say labor camps in the east. Others whisper about mass executions, about death camps, about systematic murder. Most people can't believe such stories. The rumors are too extreme, too horrible. Surely the Germans, despite their cruelty, despite their obvious hatred, surely they're not planning genocide. Surely there are limits to human evil. There are no limits. Summer 1942. The deportations begin. German SS units, supported by Ukrainian and Lithuanian auxiliaries, supported by Jewish police forced to participate, they conduct systematic roundups throughout the ghetto. Building by building, street by street, they search for Jews to deport. The targets are announced. The unemployed, the sick, the elderly, children without parents, anyone deemed non-essential to ghetto productivity. The Jews are assembled at the Umschlagplatz, the transfer point, a courtyard near the ghetto railway station. Thousands of people herded into this space, packed together under guard, waiting for trains. The trains arrive regularly, freight cars, cattle cars, designed for cargo not people. The Germans force 100, 150, sometimes 200 people into each car. The doors slide shut. The trains depart, heading east toward unknown destinations. Toward Treblinka. Toward death. July 22, 1942. The Szpilman family receives deportation notice. They're ordered to report to the Umschlagplatz for resettlement in the east. The family knows what this means or suspects or fears. The rumors about Treblinka have become more detailed, more credible. People who somehow escaped the trains tell stories of gas chambers disguised as showers, of mass graves, of systematic murder. The deportations are not resettlement. They're execution. But what choice exists? Refusing the order means immediate shooting. Hiding is nearly impossible in the overcrowded ghetto where everyone watches everyone, where the Jewish police search building by building, where German soldiers patrol constantly. The family prepares to go. They pack small bags with minimal possessions. They say goodbye to neighbors, to friends, to the apartment that's been their prison for 2 years. They walk together to the Umschlagplatz, a family unit supporting each other, maintaining dignity in the face of death. The Umschlagplatz is chaos. Thousands of people crowded into the courtyard, guards shouting orders, babies crying, old people collapsing from heat and thirst and terror. The Szpilman family stays together, holding on to each other, a small island of connection in the sea of suffering. They wait for hours, the sun beating down, no shade, no water, no mercy. Then something extraordinary happens. A Jewish policeman recognizes Szpilman. The man was a fan before the war, attended his concerts, remembers his music. The policeman is horrified to see Warsaw's famous pianist here, about to be deported, about to die. He approaches quietly, carefully, not drawing attention from German guards. He whispers urgently. There's a way out. A work detail is being assembled, musicians and artists considered useful, exempt from this transport. The policeman can add Szpilman to the list. But only Szpilman. Only one person. Not his family. Not his parents, not his sisters, not his brother. Just him. Szpilman refuses. He won't abandon his family. They'll stay together, face whatever comes together. But his father intervenes. His father, weakened by starvation, dying slowly from malnutrition and disease, he makes the decision. He grabs Szpilman's arm, pulls him close, speaks with desperate urgency. You must go. You must survive. Someone from our family must live to remember, to tell the world what happened here. Go. Save yourself. This is not abandonment. This is duty. This is love. This is a father's final command to his son. The family surrounds him, touching him, holding him for the last time. His mother kisses his face. His sisters embrace him. His brother shakes his hand, trying to smile, trying to be brave. They push him toward the policeman, toward life, toward survival. Szpilman stumbles away, looking back, watching his family disappear into the crowd, watching them being herded toward the waiting trains. He's crying, screaming inside, wanting to run back, to die with them, to refuse this terrible gift of life purchased with their deaths. But he doesn't run back. He follows the policeman. He joins the work detail. He watches from a distance as his family is loaded into a freight car, as the doors slide shut, as the train departs. They're gone. His entire family, his parents, his sisters, his brother, everyone he loves, gone. Deported to Treblinka. To the gas chambers. To death. Szpilman survives that day, but something inside him dies. He's alive physically but dead emotionally, hollowed out, emptied of everything except guilt and grief and overwhelming horror. He continues living mechanically, automatically, going through the motions of survival without purpose, without hope, without understanding why he's alive when everyone he loved is dead. He remains in the ghetto as it slowly empties. The deportations continue throughout the summer and fall of 1942. By November, the ghetto population has decreased from 400,000 to perhaps 60,000. Most have been sent to Treblinka and murdered. The survivors are workers, laborers considered temporarily useful, kept alive to serve German industries. Szpilman works in various labor details, moving furniture from abandoned apartments, sorting possessions of the deported, participating in the macabre business of processing the belongings of the murdered. April 1943. The Warsaw Ghetto uprising begins. The remaining Jews, understanding that deportation means death, choose to resist. They've smuggled weapons into the ghetto, organized fighting groups, prepared bunkers and defensive positions. When German forces enter the ghetto to conduct final liquidation, they're met with armed resistance. Molotov cocktails, homemade grenades, a few rifles and pistols against German tanks and artillery. It's hopeless, suicidal, but it's resistance. It's choosing to die fighting rather than die passively in gas chambers. Szpilman doesn't participate in the uprising. He's not a fighter, not brave, not capable of taking up arms. He hides instead, moving from building to building, from cellar to attic, staying ahead of German search units, surviving hour by hour. The ghetto burns around him. The Germans systematically destroy every building, burning entire blocks to force out hidden Jews, to eliminate every possible hiding place. The uprising lasts nearly a month, far longer than anyone expected, but the outcome is inevitable. The Germans have unlimited resources, unlimited firepower, unlimited cruelty. They crush the resistance, murder the fighters, reduce the ghetto to smoking rubble. May 1943. The ghetto is liquidated, destroyed, erased. But Szpilman is still alive, still hiding, still surviving through luck and desperation. He escapes the ghetto through the sewers, crawling through human waste and darkness, emerging on the Aryan side of Warsaw in the city beyond the walls. Here he's illegal, a hunted man, a Jew in German-occupied Poland where being Jewish is a death sentence. He has no papers, no identity, no legal right to exist. He must hide, must rely on the kindness of strangers, must survive in the ruins of Warsaw while German occupation continues around him. This is where his story truly begins to diverge from his family's fate. They died together in Treblinka, murdered within hours of their arrival, their bodies burned, their ashes scattered. Szpilman lives on, alone, hiding, enduring. He doesn't know yet that he'll survive the entire war, that he'll be saved by the unlikeliest person, that his story will become testimony to both the horror of the Holocaust and the possibility of humanity persisting even in the darkest circumstances. All he knows now is that he's alive, his family is dead, and he must continue, must survive, must honor his father's final command to live, to remember, to tell the world what happened in the Warsaw Ghetto. The Pianist of the Warsaw Ghetto Act 2. May 1943. The Władysław Szpilman emerges from the sewers on the Aryan side of Warsaw, blinking in the daylight, his clothes filthy, his body emaciated, his mind barely functioning. He's escaped the burning ghetto, but he's entered a different kind of hell. The Aryan side of Warsaw is German-controlled territory where Jews are forbidden, where being caught means immediate execution. He has no papers, no money, no connections. He's a ghost, a non-person, existing illegally in a city that wants him dead. The contrast between the two sides of Warsaw is shocking, obscene. The ghetto is destroyed, burning, a landscape of rubble and death. But here, on the Aryan side, life continues almost normally. Cafes are open. Shops sell goods. People walk the streets without fear of random roundups or deportations. The Warsaw Poles suffer under German occupation, yes, but nothing comparable to what Jews endure. The separation is deliberate, designed to divide victims, to prevent solidarity, to make collaboration easier by showing Poles that cooperation brings relative safety while resistance brings destruction. Szpilman finds shelter through the underground network, Polish resistance members who risk their lives hiding Jews. Not all Poles help. Many collaborate with Germans, report hidden Jews for reward money, participate in the hunting of escaped prisoners. But some resist. Some maintain their humanity despite the terror, despite the risk, despite everything. These people, these quiet heroes, they save Szpilman's life repeatedly over the next 18 months. His first refuge is an apartment belonging to Andrzej Bogucki, a resistance member who knew Szpilman before the war, who attended his concerts, who remembers the Pianist Warsaw celebrated. Bogucki hides Szpilman in a small room, brings him food, provides clean clothes, helps him begin recovering from the physical and psychological trauma of the ghetto. But the situation is desperately dangerous. German police conduct frequent searches, checking papers, hunting for hidden Jews. Szpilman can't stay in one place too long. He must keep moving, keep hiding, stay invisible. Summer 1943. Szpilman moves through a series of safe houses, each one temporary, each one precarious. He stays in attics, in cellars, in abandoned apartments. His protectors change regularly, networks of people passing him from contact to contact, minimizing risk through compartmentalization. Most of his protectors are strangers, people who help because it's right, because they refuse to accept German evil as inevitable, because they believe in basic human decency even when decency is punishable by death. The isolation is crushing, more terrible than the physical deprivation. Szpilman spends weeks, months alone, locked in rooms, unable to speak, unable to move freely, unable to see sunlight. He has nothing to do, nothing to occupy his mind except memories. Memories of his family. His mother's face. His father's voice. His sister's laughter. His brother's jokes. All of them dead now, murdered in Treblinka, reduced to ash and smoke. The guilt is overwhelming, suffocating. Why did he survive? Why was he pulled from the deportation line while they went to their deaths? What right does he have to live when they're dead? He thinks constantly about suicide. Would be easy. Jump from a window. Cut his wrists. Stop eating and let starvation finish what the Germans started. Why continue? What purpose does his survival serve? His family is gone. His city is destroyed. His culture is being systematically erased. He has no future, no hope, no reason to endure another day of hiding in fear and crushing loneliness. But he doesn't kill himself. Something stops him. Maybe it's his father's final words, the command to survive, to remember, to bear witness. Maybe it's simple biological instinct, the animal drive to live regardless of circumstances. Maybe it's the knowledge that killing himself would make his protectors' sacrifices meaningless, would prove the Germans right, would be a final victory for the forces of death and hatred. He continues living, mechanically, automatically, without joy or purpose, but living nonetheless. Autumn 1943. The safe houses become increasingly difficult to maintain. The Germans are tightening their control, conducting more frequent searches, punishing Poles caught hiding Jews with immediate execution. Several of Szpilman's protectors are arrested, tortured, killed. The network is fragmenting, collapsing under pressure. Finding new hiding places becomes nearly impossible. Szpilman faces the terrifying possibility that there's nowhere left to hide, that he'll be caught, that his survival until now has only delayed the inevitable. Winter 1943-44. He's moved to an abandoned apartment in a building partially destroyed by earlier bombing. The apartment has no heat, no running water, no electricity. The windows are broken, letting in freezing wind and snow. Food deliveries are irregular, sometimes delayed for days, leaving him starving in the cold darkness. He wraps himself in whatever he can find, old curtains, newspapers, anything providing minimal insulation against the brutal Polish winter. The cold is terrible, penetrating, inescapable. His fingers go numb. His toes blacken with frostbite. He can see his breath indoors, can feel his body temperature dropping, can sense his organs shutting down from hypothermia and starvation. He's dying slowly, freezing to death in an abandoned apartment in the ruins of Warsaw. Sometimes he's delirious, hallucinating, seeing his family, hearing music, losing touch with reality. But again somehow he survives. Spring comes eventually. The temperature rises. Food deliveries resume. His body, impossibly resilient, recovers enough to continue functioning. He's skeletal now, weighing perhaps 40 kilograms, his body consuming itself to survive, his muscles atrophied, his face gaunt and aged beyond recognition. He looks at himself in a broken mirror and doesn't recognize the ghost staring back. Spring 1944. The situation in Warsaw grows more chaotic. The Soviet army is advancing from the east, pushing German forces back, approaching Warsaw. The Polish Home Army, the main resistance organization, begins preparing for an uprising, planning to liberate Warsaw before Soviet forces arrive, to establish Polish authority over the capital before Stalin can impose communist control. The entire city is tense, waiting, preparing for the explosion everyone knows is coming. July 1944. Szpilman's protectors move him again, this time to a hospital building in the Ochota district, a building damaged but still partially standing. They explain that this will be his last hiding place. The uprising is coming soon. When it begins, the city will become a battlefield. They can't guarantee they'll be able to bring him food or provide protection. He'll be completely alone, isolated, dependent entirely on himself for survival. They leave him with whatever supplies they can spare, a few tins of food, some water, blankets, candles. Then they're gone and he's truly alone. August 1, 1944. The Warsaw Uprising begins. Szpilman hears the explosions, the gunfire, the sounds of battle erupting throughout the city. From his hiding place in the damaged hospital building, he watches through broken windows as Polish resistance fighters attack German positions. The fighting is intense, desperate, incredibly brave. The Poles are outnumbered, outgunned, but they're fighting for their city, for their freedom, for their right to exist as a nation. The German response is overwhelming, brutal, designed to crush resistance through sheer destructive force. Artillery pounds resistance positions. Luftwaffe bombers attack from the air. German infantry, supported by tanks and heavy weapons, systematically clear neighborhoods, killing resistance fighters and civilians indiscriminately. The city becomes a hellscape of fire and destruction, worse even than the initial siege in 1939. Szpilman is trapped. He can't leave the building. The streets are deadly, filled with fighting, with German patrols, with collapsing structures and random artillery strikes. His supplies run out quickly. The food disappears within days. The water is gone within a week. He's starving again, desperately thirsty, unable to do anything except hide and hope the building doesn't collapse around him. He searches the hospital building for anything edible. He finds nothing. The building was looted long ago, stripped of medicine, equipment, anything valuable. He's reduced to eating paper, wallpaper paste, anything providing the illusion of sustenance. His body begins shutting down again, his strength fading, his mind growing fuzzy and confused from dehydration and malnutrition. Days blur together. He loses track of time, can't distinguish day from night, can't remember how long he's been here. He drifts in and out of consciousness, hallucinating vividly, seeing his family, having conversations with dead people, losing his grip on reality. He's dying. He knows he's dying. This time there's no rescue coming, no protector bringing food, no miracle saving him at the last moment. He'll die here, alone in the ruins of this hospital, just another anonymous corpse in a city full of corpses. September 1944. The building shakes from a nearby explosion. Szpilman wakes from semi-consciousness, confused, disoriented. The explosion was close, very close. He realizes German forces are approaching this district, systematically destroying buildings, clearing areas of resistance fighters. His building will be next. He needs to move, needs to find a better hiding place, needs to do something, but he can barely stand, barely think, barely function. He forces himself up, stumbling through the building, searching for somewhere safer to hide. The building is massive, a former hospital complex with multiple wings, cellars, attics, countless rooms. He explores desperately, looking for somewhere the Germans might miss, somewhere he might survive the systematic destruction approaching his position. He finds an attic space in a partially collapsed wing of the building. The access is difficult, requiring climbing through rubble and debris. The attic itself is cramped, dark, filled with dust and debris. But it's isolated, hidden, unlikely to be searched. He crawls into this space, pulls rubble across the entrance to conceal it, and collapses, exhausted, spent, waiting for death or liberation, whichever comes first. October 1944. The Warsaw Uprising fails. After 63 days of fighting, the Polish resistance surrenders. They fought heroically, impossibly, but they were overwhelmed by superior German firepower and abandoned by Soviet forces who waited across the river, watching Warsaw burn, allowing the Germans to destroy the resistance that might have opposed Soviet domination. The surrender is complete, unconditional. German forces control Warsaw again. The Germans begin systematically destroying what remains of the city. Hitler orders Warsaw razed, erased, punished for daring to resist. Special demolition units move through the city, building by building, planting explosives, burning structures, reducing Warsaw to rubble. The destruction is thorough, methodical, designed to ensure Warsaw ceases to exist as a city, becomes merely ruins, a warning to other occupied territories about the cost of resistance. Szpilman hears the demolitions, feels the building shaking as nearby structures are destroyed. He waits for his building to be demolished, for the explosives to detonate, for the collapse that will bury him in rubble. But somehow, miraculously, impossibly, his building is missed. The demolition crews move past it, either overlooking it or deciding the partially destroyed structure isn't worth the explosives. He survives again through pure blind luck, through chance, through whatever force or fate or divine intervention keeps him alive despite everything. November 1944. Warsaw is a ghost city, a wasteland of ruins, almost completely depopulated. The Germans have deported surviving civilians to labor camps or expelled them to surrounding areas. The resistance is destroyed, executed, or imprisoned. The city is empty, dead, a monument to German cruelty and Polish suffering. And somewhere in this wasteland, in the ruins of a destroyed hospital building, the Władysław Szpilman continues living barely, impossibly, against all logic and probability. He's beyond hunger now, beyond pain, beyond fear. His body has entered the final stages of starvation, shutting down non-essential functions, consuming itself to maintain life for a few more days, a few more hours. He can't walk anymore. He can barely move. He lies in the attic, wrapped in rags, waiting to die, hoping death comes quickly, hoping the end brings peace and reunion with his family. And then, impossibly, he hears something. Footsteps. Someone is in the building. His heart races, terror flooding through him despite his exhaustion. German soldiers. They found him. After surviving this long, hiding this carefully, enduring this much, they've finally found him. He'll be shot here in this attic, killed like an animal, his body left to rot in the ruins. The footsteps approach. Closer. Closer. Someone is climbing toward the attic. Szpilman tries to move, to hide deeper in the shadows, but his body won't respond. He can only lie there helpless, waiting. The rubble concealing the attic entrance is moved aside. Light floods in, blinding after so long in darkness. A figure appears, silhouetted against the light, and Szpilman closes his eyes, waiting for the gunshot, for the end, for death to finally claim him after this long, terrible struggle to survive. But the gunshot doesn't come. Instead, a voice speaks in German, quiet, surprised, almost gentle. The voice asks a question. Who are you? What are you doing here? Are you alive? Szpilman opens his eyes, squinting against the light, trying to see who's speaking. The figure moves closer, and Szpilman sees a German Wehrmacht officer, middle-aged, wearing a long coat, looking at him with an expression that seems almost like concern, almost like horror, almost like compassion. The officer asks more questions. Are you Jewish? Are you alone? How long have you been here? Szpilman can barely speak, his voice a hoarse whisper, his throat damaged from dehydration and disuse. He manages to croak out a response. Yes, Jewish. Alone. Months. Many months. The officer stares at him, processing this information, understanding what he's found. A hidden Jew still alive somehow in the ruins of Warsaw, starving, dying, utterly helpless. The officer makes a decision. He tells Szpilman to stay hidden, to remain quiet. He'll return. He leaves, and Szpilman is alone again, confused, terrified, not understanding what just happened, not daring to hope that this encounter might mean something other than delayed execution. But the officer does return. Hours later he comes back carrying food. Bread, real bread, soft and fresh. A jar of jam. Water. He gives these things to Szpilman, watches as the starving man eats desperately, warns him to eat slowly, not to make himself sick. Then the officer asks a strange question. Can you play piano? Are you a musician? Szpilman nods, not understanding why this matters, not understanding what this German officer wants. The officer explains that there's a piano in the building in one of the ground floor rooms. He wants Szpilman to play something. Play what? Anything. Something Polish. Something beautiful. Szpilman is confused, suspicious, frightened. Is this a trap? Some kind of game before execution? But he's too weak to resist, too desperate to refuse this strange request. The officer helps him down from the attic, supports him as they navigate through the ruined building, leads him to a ground floor room where, incredibly, a piano stands intact, dusty and damaged but functional. Szpilman sits at the piano, places his hands on the keys, fingers trembling, weak, barely able to press down. And then, after years of silence, after years of hiding and suffering and loss, he plays. He plays Chopin. Nocturne in C-sharp minor. The notes come haltingly at first, his fingers weak and unpracticed, but muscle memory takes over, the music flowing through him, expressing everything he can't say in words. All the grief, all the loss, all the horror, all the impossible endurance, it pours out through Chopin's melancholy melody, filling the ruined building with sound, with beauty, with defiant humanity persisting in the heart of destruction. The German officer stands listening, tears running down his face, understanding in that moment what he's witnessing. Not just a hidden Jew. Not just a starving survivor. A human being, a soul, a musician, someone who contains within himself everything the Nazis are trying to destroy. Culture, beauty, the human spirit, the capacity for creation and hope and transcendence. And this man, this broken skeletal figure, he's still playing Chopin in the ruins of Warsaw, still creating beauty despite everything, still refusing to let death and hatred have the final word. When Szpilman finishes, the officer speaks. His name is Wilm Hosenfeld. He's a captain in the Wehrmacht, a reluctant soldier who never wanted this war, who's horrified by what his country has become, who carries guilt for serving an evil regime. He can't undo the Holocaust. He can't stop the war. But he can do one thing. He can save this one man. This pianist. This bearer of beauty and humanity in the midst of hell. Hosenfeld makes a promise. He'll bring food regularly as often as he can, as long as he's stationed in this area. Szpilman must stay hidden, must remain quiet, must survive until the war ends. The Soviets are coming. The Germans are retreating. Warsaw will be liberated soon, perhaps weeks, perhaps days. Survive until then. Just survive. And he keeps his promise. Throughout November and December 1944, through the last terrible winter of the war, Hosenfeld returns regularly, bringing bread, canned food, water, blankets, whatever he can spare. He asks nothing in return. He doesn't want gratitude or repayment or acknowledgement. He's simply doing what his conscience demands, saving one life when he's powerless to save millions, maintaining his humanity when everything around him denies humanity's existence. They talk sometimes, these two men from opposite sides of the war, the Jewish pianist and the German officer. Hosenfeld speaks of his family, his children, his home in Germany. He expresses shame for his country, horror at German crimes, fear about what will happen when Germany loses the war. Szpilman listens, says little, still processing this impossible situation, still not entirely believing that a German officer is saving his life, still waiting for betrayal, for the trap to spring, for this kindness to reveal itself as cruelty. But the betrayal never comes. The trap doesn't spring. Hosenfeld is genuine, sincere, risking his own life to save a stranger because it's right, because he refuses to be complicit in genocide, because somewhere in the heart of Nazi Germany's military machine human decency still exists, fragile and rare but real. January 1945. Soviet artillery begins pounding Warsaw. The Red Army is approaching, preparing to liberate the city, to drive out the remaining German forces. Hosenfeld comes one last time bringing food, saying goodbye. His unit is evacuating, retreating westward ahead of the Soviet advance. He won't be able to help anymore. Szpilman is on his own again. But liberation is coming. The Soviets will be here within days. Just survive a little longer. Just hold on. Hosenfeld gives Szpilman his coat, a warm Wehrmacht officer's coat, better protection against the winter cold than the rags Szpilman wears. It's a dangerous gift. If Soviet soldiers see him wearing German military clothing, they might shoot him as a collaborator. But it's also the warmest garment Szpilman has had in years. He accepts it, thanks Hosenfeld inadequately, watches as the German officer walks away, disappearing into the ruins, leaving Szpilman alone once more in the destroyed building, alone but alive, alone but no longer abandoned, alone but carrying the memory of unexpected kindness in the darkest place imaginable. The Soviet bombardment intensifies. The building shakes constantly. Szpilman huddles in his hiding place, wrapped in Hosenfeld's coat, eating the last food the officer brought, waiting for liberation or death, no longer sure which he expects, no longer sure which he wants. He's survived this long. His family is dead. His city is destroyed. His world is gone. What comes next? What does liberation mean when everything is already lost? He doesn't know. He can only wait, endure, survive one more day, one more hour, one more moment. The war is ending. But for the Władysław Szpilman, the struggle is not over. Not yet. The Pianist of the Warsaw Ghetto Act 3. January 17, 1945. The Soviet army enters Warsaw. Red Army soldiers advance through the ruins, securing the devastated city, driving out the last German defenders. The liberation is chaotic, violent, confused. Artillery shells still fall randomly. Machine gun fire echoes through empty streets. The Soviets don't know the city is almost completely evacuated, don't realize they're liberating a ghost town, a wasteland of rubble inhabited by perhaps a few hundred survivors hiding in cellars and ruins. Szpilman hears the Soviet voices, the Russian commands, the sounds of tanks and trucks moving through the streets. Liberation. After 5.5 years of German occupation, after the ghetto, after the deportations, after the uprising and destruction, after everything, Warsaw is finally free. He should feel joy, relief, triumph. He feels nothing. His emotions are dead, burned out, exhausted. He survived, but survival feels hollow, meaningless, purchased with the deaths of everyone he loved. He remains in his hiding place for days, too weak to move, too frightened to reveal himself, not yet trusting that liberation is real. Soviet soldiers patrol the ruins, searching for German stragglers, for hidden weapons, for anything valuable in the destroyed city. Szpilman hears them passing near his building multiple times. He stays silent, hidden, waiting. But hunger eventually forces him out. The food Hosenfeld brought is gone. He hasn't eaten in 3 days. His body, already pushed beyond its limits, is shutting down again. If he doesn't find food soon, he'll die here, alone in the ruins, killed by starvation just hours after liberation. The irony is too cruel. He must take the risk. He must reveal himself, seek help, hope the Soviet soldiers don't shoot him on sight. January 20th. Szpilman emerges from the ruined hospital building, stumbling into daylight, squinting against the brightness after months of darkness. He's wearing Hosenfeld's Wehrmacht coat, the warm gray officer's coat that saved him from freezing. He doesn't think about how this looks, how Soviet soldiers might interpret a skeletal figure in German military clothing emerging from ruins. He's beyond thinking clearly, beyond calculating risk. He simply walks toward the nearest Soviet patrol, hands raised, hoping they understand he's not a threat, not an enemy, just a survivor seeking help. The Soviet soldiers see him. They shout commands in Russian, raising their weapons, ordering him to stop, to identify himself. Szpilman freezes, terror flooding through him. He tries to speak, to explain in Polish, but his voice barely works, his throat damaged from months of silence and deprivation. The soldiers approach cautiously, fingers on triggers, treating him as potential enemy. They see the German coat, see his emaciated condition, see something that doesn't make sense, something suspicious, something dangerous. One soldier grabs him roughly, searching for weapons, checking pockets, finding nothing. Another soldier demands identification, papers, explanation for why he's wearing German uniform. Szpilman tries to explain. Polish, Jewish, hiding, survived. German officer gave him coat. The words come out broken, confused, unconvincing. The soldiers don't believe him. They think he's German or a collaborator or a spy. They argue among themselves in Russian, debating what to do with him. Then one soldier, older than the others, looks at Szpilman more carefully. Looks at his face, his condition, his obvious starvation. The soldier asks a question in broken Polish. Jew? You Jew? Szpilman nods desperately. Yes, Jewish. From ghetto. Family killed in Treblinka. Hiding for 2 years. Please believe me. The soldier stares at him for a long moment, evaluating, deciding. Then he lowers his weapon. He believes. Or he chooses to believe. Or he simply can't bring himself to shoot someone so obviously broken, so obviously harmless. The soldiers take him to their command post, a relatively intact building requisitioned as temporary headquarters. They give him food, hot soup, bread, tea. He eats carefully, remembering Hosenfeld's warning, not wanting to make himself sick. An officer questions him, taking his story down in writing, trying to verify his identity. Szpilman explains who he is, who he was. The pianist. Polish radio. Before the war he was famous, recognized, celebrated. Now he's nobody, a skeletal ghost without papers or proof of identity. The Soviet officer is skeptical but not hostile. There's a woman in the unit, a Polish translator working with the Red Army. She recognizes his name. Szpilman. The pianist. She remembers listening to his broadcasts before the war. She vouches for him, confirms his identity, saves him from potential imprisonment or execution as suspected collaborator. The officer accepts her testimony, releases Szpilman, directs him to the civilian authorities being established in the liberated city. But where can he go? Warsaw is destroyed, emptied, uninhabitable. Most buildings are damaged beyond use. There's no electricity, no water, no infrastructure. The few survivors are scattered, searching for lost family members, trying to locate friends, attempting to rebuild some semblance of life from total destruction. Szpilman wanders the ruins, recognizing nothing, his city transformed into an alien landscape of rubble and devastation. He searches for other survivors from the ghetto, from his community, from his world. He finds a tiny handful of Jews who survived through hiding, through luck, through the same desperate struggle he endured. They gather in damaged buildings, share information, ask about missing family members, search desperately for any news of loved ones. Almost everyone is looking for someone. Almost everyone is disappointed. The deportations took everyone. Treblinka killed everyone. The surviving community is measured in dozens, perhaps low hundreds, from a population that once numbered hundreds of thousands. Szpilman asks about his family. No one has information. No one saw them after the deportation. No survivors from Treblinka exist to provide testimony. His family simply disappeared into the German death machine, murdered and cremated, reduced to ash, leaving no trace except his memories. He's alone. Completely, utterly, definitively alone. His parents are dead. His sisters are dead. His brother is dead. Every relative, every connection to his past, gone. The survivor community tries to help him. They find him shelter in a partially intact apartment, share their meager food supplies, provide clothing to replace the German coat that's now too dangerous to wear. They reconnect him with surviving members of the Polish resistance who protected him, who risked their lives repeatedly to keep him alive. These people greet him with joy, relief, pride. They saved him. Their sacrifice meant something. He's alive, proof that resistance was possible, that not everyone died, that some fragment of Jewish Warsaw survived. But Szpilman feels disconnected from their joy, unable to share their relief or satisfaction. He's grateful, yes. He owes them his life, knows he'd be dead without their courage and compassion. But gratitude feels abstract, intellectual, not emotional. His emotions are still dead, still locked away behind walls built through years of trauma and loss. He goes through the motions of living, eating, sleeping, interacting with people, but it all feels mechanical, automatic, meaningless. February 1945. The survivor community begins organizing, attempting to rebuild Jewish institutional life, to create some continuity with the destroyed past. They establish a committee, register survivors, compile lists of the dead and missing, gather testimony about the Holocaust. They ask Szpilman to contribute his testimony, to describe what he witnessed in the ghetto, during the deportations, throughout his time in hiding. He agrees, sits with a recorder, speaks for hours, describing everything in flat, emotionless detail. His testimony is devastating. The casual cruelty, the systematic starvation, the deportations to Treblinka, the gas chambers he never saw but everyone knew about, the mass murder happening just kilometers away while the world did nothing. His words are precise, detailed, unsparing. The recorder writes frantically, capturing everything, creating a document that will become part of the historical record, evidence for future trials, proof of German crimes. But even as he testifies, even as he describes the horrors he witnessed, Szpilman feels detached, as if he's describing someone else's experiences, someone else's suffering. He can't access his emotions about these events. They're locked away somewhere inaccessible, buried under layers of trauma and psychological protection. He knows intellectually that terrible things happened, that he suffered enormously, that he lost everything. But he can't feel it, can't process it, can't grieve properly. He's numb, frozen, emotionally dead. March 1945. Representatives from Polish radio contact him. The station is attempting to resume broadcasts, to restore normal programming, to help Poland recover from occupation through culture and entertainment. They remember Szpilman, their star pianist from before the war. They want him to return, to perform again, to symbolize cultural continuity, to show that Polish culture survived despite German efforts to destroy it. Szpilman is reluctant. He hasn't played piano seriously in years, not since those performances in ghetto cafes. His hands are weak, his fingers stiff, his technique degraded by malnutrition and lack of practice. More fundamentally, he's not sure he can play anymore, not sure music has any meaning after everything he's witnessed and endured. How can you play Chopin when you've watched your family deported to death camps? How can you perform beautiful music when the world has proven itself capable of such ugly evil? But he agrees to try. Music was his identity before the war, his purpose, his connection to meaning and beauty. Maybe it can be again. Maybe through music he can reconnect with his emotions, process his trauma, find some path forward through the grief and loss. He returns to the radio station, to studios that are damaged but functional, to a piano that's out of tune but playable. The station staff greet him warmly, excitedly, treating him as a returning hero. But they're also shocked by his appearance. He's skeletal, gaunt, aged decades beyond his actual years. His hands shake. His eyes are hollow, haunted, distant. He looks like a ghost, like someone who died but forgot to stop walking. The staff try to hide their shock, try to treat him normally, but he sees their reactions, understands how dramatically he's changed. He sits at the piano, places his hands on the keys, attempts to play. The notes come out wrong, discordant, his fingers not obeying his intentions. His technique is gone, destroyed by years of starvation and inactivity. He tries again, chooses something simpler, something his muscle memory might remember. Chopin. Always Chopin. Nocturne in C-sharp minor. The same piece he played for Hosenfeld. This time it works. The music flows, tentative at first but gaining strength, his fingers remembering what his mind has forgotten. He plays the entire piece, eyes closed, lost in the music, feeling something stirring inside him, some emotion breaking through the numbness. When he finishes, he opens his eyes. The studio staff are crying. They've witnessed something profound, something beyond entertainment or performance. They've seen a man returning to life, reconnecting with his humanity through music, proving that beauty and art survive even the worst evil humanity can devise. The broadcast is scheduled for April 1945. Szpilman's first public performance since before the ghetto. The same studio he broadcast from before the war. The same piano, the same microphone, the same setting. But everything else has changed. Poland has changed. Warsaw has changed. He has changed beyond recognition. The broadcast begins. Szpilman plays. His performance is technically imperfect, his hands still weak, his execution flawed. But the emotion is overwhelming, raw, honest, carrying all the pain and loss and survival he can't express in words. People throughout Poland, listening on radios in damaged homes and temporary shelters, they hear something extraordinary. Not just music, testimony, witness, proof that Polish culture survived, that Jewish culture survived, that the human spirit persisted despite everything. After the broadcast, the letters begin arriving. Hundreds of them. Survivors writing to thank him for playing, for surviving, for representing everyone who didn't. People searching for information about lost family members, hoping somehow Szpilman might have seen them, might know something about their fate. Former ghetto residents, fellow survivors, people who knew him before the war, everyone reaching out, trying to rebuild connections severed by occupation and genocide. One letter is different from the others. It's from Germany, from a woman named Anne-Marie Hosenfeld. She's writing about her husband, Wilm Hosenfeld, the Wehrmacht officer who saved Szpilman's life. Hosenfeld was captured by Soviet forces during the final retreat from Warsaw. He's being held in a Soviet prisoner of war camp somewhere in the USSR. His wife is desperate for information, trying to locate him, trying to help him. She heard about Szpilman's broadcast, learned that her husband helped him. She's asking, begging for Szpilman to testify on Hosenfeld's behalf, to help secure his release, to repay the kindness that saved his life. Szpilman reads the letter with growing horror. Hosenfeld captured. Imprisoned. Suffering in Soviet camps that are notoriously brutal, where German prisoners are treated with the same cruelty Germans showed their captives. The man who saved his life, who risked everything to help a stranger, who proved that human decency existed even in the Wehrmacht, he's now suffering, possibly dying, certainly in desperate need of help. Szpilman immediately writes testimony describing everything Hosenfeld did, how he saved his life, how he brought food repeatedly, how he acted with compassion and courage. He sends this testimony to Soviet authorities, to International Red Cross, to any organization that might have influence. He writes letters, makes appeals, does everything possible to help the man who helped him. But it's not enough. The bureaucracy is impenetrable, the Soviet system unresponsive to appeals from Polish Jews about German prisoners. Months pass with no response, no information, no indication that anyone cares about one Wehrmacht captain imprisoned somewhere in the Soviet Union. Szpilman continues trying, continues writing, continues hoping. But hope fades as time passes without news. The years go by. Szpilman rebuilds his life slowly, painfully. He continues performing, composing, working for Polish radio. He marries eventually, has children, creates new family to replace the one he lost. Outwardly he appears recovered, functional, successful. But the trauma remains, buried deep, expressing itself in nightmares, in moments of dissociation, in an inability to speak about his experiences without emotional shutdown. He doesn't talk about the war years. He can't. The memories are too painful, too overwhelming, too destructive to his carefully maintained equilibrium. His wife knows fragments of his story but not details. His children grow up knowing their father is a Holocaust survivor but not understanding what that means, not comprehending the depths of his suffering and loss. Szpilman presents a facade of normalcy, maintaining it through will and discipline and refusal to examine his trauma too closely. Information finally arrives about Hosenfeld. Not from official channels. From another German former prisoner, released from Soviet camps, returning to Germany. He knew Hosenfeld in the camp, witnessed his final years. The news is devastating. Hosenfeld died in 1952 in a Soviet prison camp in Stalingrad. He died of injuries and disease, after years of brutal imprisonment, after suffering treatment similar to what German camps inflicted on Soviet prisoners. The man who saved Szpilman, who demonstrated human decency in the midst of genocide, he died in captivity, punished for being German, unable to be saved despite Szpilman's testimony and appeals. The guilt is crushing, overwhelming, adding to the enormous burden Szpilman already carries. Survivors' guilt about his family. Guilt about escaping the deportation while they died. Guilt about being pulled from the line at the Umschlagplatz. Guilt about surviving the war while millions didn't. And now guilt about Hosenfeld, about failing to save the man who saved him, about being unable to repay the debt he owes. But he can't express this guilt, can't process it properly, can't grieve openly. He locks it away with all his other trauma, buries it deep, maintains his facade of functionality. He continues working, performing, living. He becomes one of Poland's most celebrated musicians, recording albums, performing concerts, composing film scores. His career flourishes. His reputation grows. Outwardly he's successful, accomplished, admired. Inwardly he's still trapped in Warsaw, still hiding in ruins, still watching his family disappear into deportation trains, still unable to escape the past. Decades pass. The 1960s, 70s, 80s. Szpilman lives through communist Poland, through censorship and political repression and enforced silence about many aspects of the war. Holocaust discussion is permitted but constrained, fitted into approved narratives, used for political purposes. Personal testimony is discouraged, individual stories subordinated to collective memory shaped by state ideology. Szpilman remains silent about his experiences. He's written nothing, published nothing, shared nothing publicly about his survival, about the ghetto, about Hosenfeld. The trauma is too raw, too personal, too painful. He's built a life, a career, a family, all of it constructed on top of buried grief and unprocessed loss. Examining that foundation too closely might cause everything to collapse. Better to maintain silence, to keep working, to live in the present and avoid the past. Communism collapses in Poland. The Soviet system crumbles. Eastern Europe opens, liberates, begins confronting suppressed histories and forbidden memories. Holocaust survivors, previously constrained in what they could say, begin publishing memoirs, sharing testimony, claiming space for their individual stories within the larger historical narrative. Szpilman's son discovers a manuscript his father wrote decades earlier, immediately after the war, before silence became his coping mechanism. A detailed account of his experiences in the ghetto, his time in hiding, his survival, Hosenfeld's rescue. The manuscript has been hidden away, never shown to anyone, never considered for publication. His son reads it, is overwhelmed by its power and importance, convinces his father to publish it. Szpilman is reluctant, deeply uncomfortable with the idea of making his story public. He spent 50 years avoiding this, maintaining silence, protecting himself from having to relive the trauma. But he's also older now, aware of his mortality, understanding that soon he'll be gone and his testimony will die with him. If not now, when? If not him, who? The manuscript represents not just his story but the story of Warsaw's Jews, of the ghetto, of the destruction of a world. It deserves to be remembered, needs to be preserved, must be shared before it's too late. The book is published in 1998, 53 years after the war's end. It's titled The Pianist, a simple title for an extraordinary story. The response is overwhelming. The book becomes an international bestseller, translated into dozens of languages, read by millions. People are shocked by Szpilman's story, by what he endured and witnessed, by the casual cruelty he describes, by Hosenfeld's unexpected humanity, by the complexity and horror and occasional beauty of human behavior under impossible circumstances. Film director Roman Polanski, himself a Holocaust survivor and Warsaw native, reads the book and knows immediately he must make it into a film. He contacts Szpilman, asks for permission, receives it. The film is produced, directed with Polanski's personal understanding of the subject matter, his intimate knowledge of the setting, his own trauma informing every frame. But Szpilman doesn't live to see the film completed. He dies in July 2000, age 88, having finally broken his silence, having finally shared his story, having finally allowed himself to remember and grieve publicly. He dies in Warsaw, the city he never left despite everything, the city that killed his family but couldn't kill him, the city he loved despite the horrors it contained. The film, The Pianist, is released in 2002, winning the Palme d'Or at Cannes, winning Academy Awards, winning international recognition and acclaim. Millions watch Szpilman's story, experience vicariously his suffering and survival, learn about Hosenfeld's unexpected heroism. The film ensures Szpilman's testimony reaches global audiences, preserves his memory, honors his survival and his family's destruction. And slowly, gradually, Hosenfeld receives recognition too. His actions saving Szpilman and other Jews, documented through testimony and research, lead to posthumous honors. Israel recognizes him as righteous among the nations in 2009, honoring non-Jews who risked their lives to save Jews during the Holocaust. His name is inscribed at Yad Vashem, preserved in the memorial to those who chose humanity over ideology, who risked everything to save strangers, who proved that even in systems designed to destroy human decency, individual choice remained possible. Szpilman's piano still exists, preserved in a museum in Warsaw. The instrument he played before the war, the instrument that connected him to beauty and meaning and purpose. Visitors can see it, can imagine his hands on the keys, can understand music's power to preserve humanity in the face of evil. The piano is silent now, but it testifies. It witnesses. It remembers when words fail and memory fades. Warsaw has been rebuilt, transformed from ruins into a modern city. But markers remain, memorials and museums preserving memory of what happened here. The ghetto site is marked, commemorated, explained to new generations who never experienced occupation or genocide. The Umschlagplatz has a memorial, simple and devastating, marking the place where Szpilman's family and hundreds of thousands of others were loaded onto trains to Treblinka. Stones inscribed with names. Photographs of the vanished. Testimony carved in stone because flesh couldn't survive but memory must. Szpilman's story has become part of collective memory now, shared beyond his individual experience, representing millions who suffered and died, representing the few who survived, representing the moral complexity of human behavior under extreme conditions. His survival doesn't diminish the deaths of those who didn't survive. His testimony doesn't answer every question or resolve every moral ambiguity. But it witnesses. It preserves. It refuses to let the world forget. The story began in Warsaw in 1939, with a family huddled in an apartment while the city burned. It ended in Warsaw in 2000, with an old man dying in the city he never abandoned, having finally told his truth, having finally honored his father's command to survive, to remember, to bear witness. Between those moments stretched 61 years of survival, silence, grief, recovery, and ultimately testimony. The Władysław Szpilman lost his family in the Holocaust. He survived through luck, through the kindness of strangers, through the unexpected compassion of an enemy soldier, through his own stubborn refusal to die. He carried that survival as both gift and burden for the rest of his life, unable to fully process or accept it, unable to understand why he lived when everyone he loved died. But he endured. He survived. He testified. And his testimony, preserved in words and music and film, ensures that his family and the world they came from will be remembered, will be mourned, will never be forgotten. That is his legacy. That is why his story must be told. That is what his survival, however painful, however guilt-laden, ultimately achieved.